If you feel lonely, if you have no friends, if you feel like opportunities to make new connections seem to have disappeared, that meeting people is impossible, well, then buckle up, because opportunity is all around us, but we have forgotten what it looks like. We don't see it because we have trained our minds to ignore these opportunities. If you're like me, you have crafted a series of habits that intentionally filter out opportunities to connect with people. In this video, I will point out places where you can effortlessly strike up a conversation that does not seem forced or creepy on a topic that both you and the interlocutor you'd be speaking with already know something about. But more importantly, I will try and point out ways that you are sabotaging your own goal of meeting new people and what to do about it. Hey everybody, Marcus here. To get a good grasp on social dynamics, we need to talk about smoking. Now, I smoke cigarettes. As disgusting as this habit is, it is not without its upsides. On the one hand, it does expose in me a character flaw, but no one is perfect. And people do not really like other people who appear too perfect. Smoking, as an externally visible act, strangely enough, makes me more likable. It gives non-smokers something to lord over me. My smoking makes them feel better about themselves. No one is jealous of a smoker. Non-smokers do not envy my smoking, while other smokers feel that they have encountered a kindred spirit. As far as the social sphere is concerned, smoking is a net positive. I've smoked for almost 25 years, and trust me, smoking is a social net positive. And no, I am not looking to paint a positive argument to take up smoking. I am far more aware of the health implications of smoking than a non-smoker is. I mean, I live the health implications. Non-smokers do not. Non-smokers, well, they have nothing to teach me about smoking. I, on the other hand, have much to teach non-smokers about smoking. Smokers have many privileges that non-smokers do not. We have unspoken rules of social conduct that remove certain frictions as far as interactions with strangers are concerned. Smoking is an activity that has rightfully been banned from many public spaces. Now, I support these bans. These bans do make it somewhat more inconvenient to smoke, but they force smokers into small but temporary social pockets. When in public, smokers predominantly smoke outside. We tend to huddle around ashtrays or garbage cans. If it is raining, we huddle wherever we find the nearest point of shelter. We have meeting points. The smoking area can be described as a socially engineered physical space where people with a common lifestyle can go and interact with other people who share that lifestyle. Smoking cannot be done in the digital world. Now, smoking needs to be done in the real world. This means that smoking areas as social spaces will always exist. As crazy as it sounds, this is an incredible privilege in the modern world. What other activity has the sheer number of naturally occurring real-world meeting points where people can just go and usually meet other like-minded individuals? I mean, not even drinking has this reach. Not every smoker drinks, and drinking is not something that can realistically be done all day, every day, no matter what else you may be doing. For example, you can't drink at work, but you can smoke at work. The social benefits of smoking don't end here. Striking up a conversation with another smoker in a smoking area is completely normal. Both people are locked into that physical space for the duration of the cigarette. However, the implicit understanding is that the conversation has a natural end as soon as the cigarette is over. If I choose to chat up a woman in a smoking area, she knows that the conversation will end as soon as she finishes that cigarette. This awareness removes a great deal of anxiety around the interaction. I and the girl that I'm chatting up are, in essence, on a speed date. The exchange is structured. It has a time-boxed duration. It has smoking as a mutual subject to discuss, if nothing else, and yes, there is much in terms of small talk that can be said about smoking. For example, we can talk about the high price of cigarettes. We can talk about the brands of cigarettes we smoke. Have you ever tried electronic cigarettes? What do you think of them? One can also quip about cigars, chewing tobacco, snuff, or the quality of rolling tobacco versus pre-rolled cigarettes. There's more than enough conversation material to choose from, which you know the other person will be able to talk about, at least to some degree. Now, these conversations do not need to go anywhere, but they very much are natural icebreakers that can also lead to a more personal conversation. After 30 seconds of smoking small talk, you can simply ask her, "Hey, what's your name?" Everything feels natural. Nothing feels awkward or forced. So what does all of this sound like when I describe smoking in this way? It sounds like smoking inadvertently makes you into, well, sort of a pickup artist. And women too have access to these tools. Smoking area conversation gives women all the plausible deniability they need to chat up a man without, well, seeming like they're chatting up a man. After all, smoking area conversation is not inherently intentional. It is not engaged in with any specific objective in mind. Smoking area conversation is throwaway talk. Talk for the sake of talk. But it gets better. The smoking area is mobile. Though smokers do tend to rally in specific places relative to the establishment they are at, there's no reason one cannot create a makeshift smoking area anywhere outside. Now, if I am walking down the street and I see someone smoking, I am free to pull out a cigarette, go up to this person, and ask for a light. This person, consequent to smoker etiquette, will oblige. Now, I cannot ever recall a single time someone refused to share fire with me. It's simply, well, not done. It feels like an obligation to supply fire to a fellow smoker when asked. So, in turn, I have never refused fire when asked. Asking for a cigarette, however, is another story. That's usually annoying and a bridge too far, as the price of cigarettes is pretty high. However, I have been at both ends of this exchange many times. Far more often have I been asked for a cigarette than I have actually asked for one. But sometimes it just needs to be done. Now, if you are out of smokes and are far away from a place that sells them, asking for a cigarette is more reasonable. The far less annoying alternative, however, is to ask to buy a cigarette from someone and to have money visibly ready in one's hand at the moment of asking. The money held should exceed the value of the cigarette, or it feels insulting to the potential seller. Now, no one feels used upon making a profit, but they do feel used when taking a loss. Giving away a cigarette is more rewarding than taking a financial loss on the sale of a cigarette. You get that sense you performed a good deed, as opposed to the feeling you just made a crappy financial decision. When one person stops another for a light, there's a necessity to engage in light small talk. One needs to verbalize the request after all. Sure, one can make the well-understood hand gesture that communicates the need for fire, but this is far less polite when speech can be used. The hand gesture should be reserved for loud spaces like concerts or clubs. The hand gesture should also be reserved for when a social interaction is intentionally being avoided. The hand gesture in smoker code also implies that words will not be part of this interaction. Let me tell you a story. I was sitting in a cafe writing. Naturally, as a smoker, I would venture outside at regular intervals to top up my nicotine levels. So, there I am, smoking by the nearest garbage can, when a pretty girl approaches me. Now, I had my earbuds in. My mind was far away from the reality in which my physical body existed. As this woman came close to me, a level of closeness suggesting a social interaction was about to take place, I removed my earbuds. She sees what I have done and reflexively repeats her question. She was asking me for a cigarette. I look at her, reach into my pocket, and offer her a cigarette. Now, I am looking into her eyes for the most part during the entire exchange, but say nothing. She directs her gaze at the pack and scavenges for a cigarette. Now, sometimes a cigarette is a little difficult to extract from the packaging, and she is experiencing this struggle at that moment. Now, this drags out the exchange for a longer period of time than it could have taken. During this struggle, neither I nor her say anything. We are both performing our respective sides of the dance with a patient, well-trodden understanding of what is going on and why. She finally extracts the cigarette, she looks into my eyes, thanks me, then slowly begins the process of moving away and carrying on with her life. When she moves far enough away, and we both shift our gazes away from each other, I put my earbuds back in and continue to smoke my cigarette. She begins walking away. The smoker's dance is concluded. Now, about 3 to 5 seconds later, my brain turns on. What in the hell just happened? What the hell is wrong with me? The exchange was all wrong. This is not how that dance was supposed to go. The proper course of events that should have occurred were as follows. Upon removal of my earbuds and hearing her verbal request for a cigarette, I was supposed to smile and then say something along the lines of, "Oh, sure, no worries, hold on, give me a second. Then I could pull out the pack from my pocket. Then I was supposed to make a half-hearted effort to flip the bottom of the pack in anticipation that a cigarette would halfway emerge for ease of access. Now she would immediately understand why I was doing this. It would have amused her to see this effort. I mean, this is the sort of effort synonymous with opening a door for a woman. Now, I was supposed to fail to achieve this result. Upon my failure, I was supposed to make a small joke about how these soft cigarette cases just can't be trusted to make things easy. She would laugh and then begin to take the initiative to extract a cigarette in her own way. Upon encountering the struggle, she would make her own joke about the difficulty of extracting cigarettes from their packs. In retort, I was supposed to show amusement at the situation and then broaden the conversation to how there seem to be fewer and fewer smokers in the world and that therefore fewer and fewer people understand our struggle. After she finally extracted that cigarette, we should have already exchanged at least 2 jokes between us, smiled and laughed, and traded 24 words. At that point, she would have had the option to light that cigarette on the spot and continue the conversation for the duration of the cigarette. Or she could have chosen to thank me and walk away. If she lit that cigarette and just stood there to smoke beside me, we would have had a 5-minute time box to evolve the conversation. If it was going well, it could have turned into a connection that, well, could have been taken in any number of directions. If it fizzled out or started to become awkward, we would both know that it would be over very soon. No one was overtly hitting on the other, and there were no expectations of a specific outcome. Yet we would have been flirting. If it all collapsed, no one would have felt rejected. The body language was supposed to be our guide to intent. The eyes were supposed to convey the brunt of the message. Whatever the message was supposed to turn out to be, it wouldn't matter. Now, this is how that exchange was supposed to happen. But it did not happen that way. And why did it not happen that way? Because I had my stupid earbuds in. The sounds coming from those earbuds had thrown my mind into a world other than where my physical body was. When that girl approached me, I was ripped from that world. I was blindsided as to what was going on. I was caught flat-footed. I reacted to her habitually. My mind was not in the here and now and was only slowly beginning to process the world where my body existed. My brain finally finished processing reality a few seconds after the whole exchange was concluded. By then, it was all over. And the thing is, I know that the hypothetical exchange I described is how it should have gone because I have lived that hypothetical exchange dozens of times in the past. Before I started to habitually wear those earbuds, my sense of hearing was processing sensory data to the physical world around me. I would have anticipated her approach before she got too close. My ears would have sensed her footsteps. I would have also been looking around my surroundings as opposed to blankly staring into space. I would not have been caught flat-footed. I have long ago lost count of the number of girls I chatted up under similar circumstances. I mean, it was just reflexive. It was something to do. The girls were always receptive. They felt, well, an obligation to sit and listen to my nonsense because I just gave them a free cigarette. It was understood that the guy might flirt with you if you asked him for a cigarette. It was all part of the dance. Yet today, consequent to those earbuds, such exchanges happen in silence. I'm out a cigarette, and an opportunity to connect was missed. And worse than missed, it was not even registered that it was taking place. It's not like I was nervous or afraid to flirt. I was completely unaware of where I was or what was going on because my mind was so distracted. I was too distracted to even be nervous. If I could attribute any single emotion to that exchange, it would be minor annoyance. Annoyance at being pulled out of that other world and forced back into reality. The incident that I just described triggered the creation of this video. That incident kind of terrified me. It made me realize that I too was becoming feral. It's not just Gen Z, it's all of us. It is not technology that made me feral, though. I mean, technology merely gave me the shackles. I had to put those shackles on myself. I allowed myself to slowly cultivate antisocial habits. But with that realization, I also knew I could take the shackles off. All I needed to do was to take those earbuds out and go about my life as usual. So, I did just that. After I finished my cigarette, I entered the cafe, I walked to my table and put my earbuds into their charging case, and then began writing this script for the video. As scripts often take hours to write, I have now had sufficient time since removing the earbuds to comment on the immediate changes. As I write this script, I am very aware of my surroundings. My ears are tracking a large number of phenomena simultaneously. I am generally aware of the number of people in the cafe consequent to the amount of disparate voices I hear and the volume of noise. I am aware of the general distance of the other customers relative to me. Though I cannot make out the specifics of any conversation, I am aware of the tone under which those conversations are taking place. The cafe feels like there's an aura of formality as opposed to a playful frivolity one would expect on a Friday night. No one is disproportionately loud. This suggests there's a general sobriety in the air, even though my eyes see alcohol at some tables. I can hear the casual nature of the footsteps of the waitresses. The sound suggests a lack of urgency. Though I am not visually observing anything going on around me, I know that the waitresses are all caught up on their orders. All that I describe and more is happening around me, even though I am focused on my writing. I am not distracted. There's more than enough mental processing power to catalog the sounds of my surroundings while still maintaining focus on my writing. I headed for the washroom. It was occupied. Though I was the only person in line, an older woman stood beside me eventually. People stand close to each other when forming a line. The proximity at which she stood is as close as the proximity which suggests that a social exchange is meant to occur. As I no longer had my earbuds in, I was very aware of the physical closeness of this older woman. The silence between us, consequent to the proximity of our bodies, started to feel uncomfortable. I felt compelled to start a conversation with her. We were line buddies after all. What we had in common was the need to use the washroom. She was not wearing any earbuds, nor was she looking at her phone either. Her body language was open, consequent to this lack of any visible focus on her part. Had she been staring into her phone or been wearing earbuds, I would not have felt pressure to say anything. I would have felt like I was intruding if I had said something. Had I been wearing my earbuds, I would not have felt the awkward silence at all. My mind would have been elsewhere. But, as neither her nor I had our focus centered on anything, the awkward silence compelled me to speak. So, I made an off comment about how it's unfortunate there's only one washroom in this cafe. She laughed politely and further comments that it's also a shared washroom for both men and women usually need more time. It's like our exchange was scripted, honestly. I made a joke, she makes a joke, and the tension is diffused. She then pushed the topic of the washroom further by telling me an anecdote about how she once stood 10 minutes in line for the washroom, but then realized that there was, no one inside. I laughed and added that the same incident occurred to me. And I also added to the story by saying that it would have been far more embarrassing if other people were waiting in line after me when I realized my mistake. I would have looked quite silly for not having made sure the washroom was not taken before I started that line. She laughed. The occupant of the washroom exited. I give my line buddy a nod, go in, do my business, and leave. I give her a nod on my way out of the washroom and go back to my table. Now this was a proper exchange. The line dance. We both behaved like socialized human beings. Lines. Lines, like smoking areas, are naturally occurring opportunities for socializing. This realization occurred to me after my exchange with this woman, and memories flooded me of how many women I chatted up in lines for a drink at bars. I would stand by the bar intentionally. I wanted to capitalize on the fact that women would have to come into my proximity out of their necessity for a drink. A natural bottleneck, and therefore a natural gathering point. Lines have a natural termination point for conversation as well. When a person gets to the front of the line and begins to interact with the service they were in line for, the exchange ends. It's actually amazing that I've forgotten all of this. Smoking areas, lines, the bus stop, and all other waiting areas. These are all places with a time-boxed concentration of people who are unified with some shared goal, a goal that serves as a topic to start a conversation. These are the places ripe with opportunity. Even though few, if any, of such interactions will last past the context they occurred in, every conversation that occurs with a stranger becomes practice that will develop social habits. If you do this enough times, you will eventually develop scripts that, when refined through repetition, will make social interaction a breeze. The scripts will of course get boring, but that's kind of the point. When one script gets boring, you start building a new script. If you repeat this enough times, you will be able to reflexively invoke endless conversation. Habituating yourself to begin conversation with strangers is a social skill on its own. Any place where people naturally gather in a time-boxed fashion in pursuit of a goal gives you everything you need to get started. You have targets for conversation, you have a natural topic, and you have a fixed duration. All it takes on your part is open body language. Do not have earbuds in. Keep your phone in your pocket. Look bored. Look at someone. Comment on your shared situation. And if you repeat this enough times with enough people, eventually something will happen. You might find the person you are speaking with has a lot more in common with you than just the context in which you met. You might get invited to their table if they are with friends. You might get a number out of it. No one knows how it'll turn out, well, until you try. As for me, it looks like I'm not going to be wearing my earbuds in public anymore. So thanks for listening. Go team.